I have such respect for mothers and however you play that role in people's lives, right? And not all mothers are birth mothers, right? But a male child needs a male influence in their life. It
Mm,
teaches you how to do the things that men do. This is controversial, what I'm saying, I'm sure. Somebody's gonna be like, well, and that doesn't mean that women can't.
mhm. I don't hear you saying that women can't. What
Right.
I hear you say is that there is no denying that there is something special about a young growing man seeing malehood, uh, an example of it that is it's at its highest and best.
Yes. Yes. And so I didn't have that really growing up. I mean, it was tough not to have that. I think I was sort of lost a little bit. But as I got older, and I didn't do this intentionally, I guess somewhere inside of myself, I did it intentionally. I started having very close, strong relationships with men who were like brothers to me. I asked Attica Locke, New York Times bestselling author and television producer of series like Empire, Little Fires Everywhere, and From Scratch, to sit down with me for this conversation because she has known me for 40 years. We have been friends long before the pivots and negotiations that come with moving through life. At the Podium has always been a space for intimate, soul-centered conversations that peel back layers of memory, identity, transformation, and human longing. Season 4 is centered around a single question. What does it mean to return home? For me, that question isn't rhetorical. I'm back in Houston and reconnecting with places and people that color my memory like a Tennessee Williams play. I'm learning that returning home is rarely just about geography. It's about recognition and integration, about saying hello to parts of ourselves we may have put down or forgotten. There's something meaningful to me that Attica's third and final novel in her Highway 59 crime series, which is set right here in Texas, is titled Guide Me Home. That phrase captures the posture of this season. This conversation is an invitation to slow down and to consider what it means to come home, not just to a city, but to yourself. This is At the Podium, and I'm Patrick Huey. Today, we're talking about Season 4 with Attica Locke. But before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below to support my channel. Attica, welcome back to At the Podium.
Oh my God. We have known each other when we were just little somebodies. I'm picturing you back then.
Mm.
What would you say to that young man?
Ooh.
12, 15, 17.
I think I would tell him that it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
Because that time is fraught for people, right? There's so much happening in your life and your body's changing, your brain chemistry is changing, your relationship to your parents is changing. And my life at that point in those years, there was a lot of really wonderful things and there was a lot of upheaval. And so I think I would tell myself that it's gonna be okay. And I would tell myself it's not gonna look the way you think it's going to look and to be okay with that.
That part, that part. In fact, there's so many things I want to talk about. And, I knew you when the dreams that you had for yourself are different than the life that you're living now. And
Mhm.
I have frequently given people, younger people, the advice that life is too short to pretend to want things that you don't really want
Ooh,
because you told yourself that's who I am. I had told myself I was going to be a movie director and I told everybody that. So then when I realized I don't actually think maybe I don't actually want to do that, it kind of messed with my identity of myself
yeah.
because I had so, we decide really early, who we are. And I think we're in a culture that says that's who you are. That's who you are. You've decided to do that. So when you switch, I was going to ask this later, but it's just organically coming out. I knew you on a path to become an actor
Yeah.
and you have found yourself professionally in this other space where you have shown tremendously and reached tremendous heights. But what was that? What was that journey from original dream to finding yourself as a grown man
Yeah.
living a different life and living a different dream?
Yeah. That ties back to the first question. It's not going to look the way you think it's going to look.
Mm,
I had loved being an actor, and I think I loved being an artist even more because even back then I was writing, I was
mm,
playing the saxophone, I was playing the piano. I think acting was the language that I could put around what I wanted to do and be because it was a thing in front of me. And I love that feeling of being on stage. I think the shift came, and it's, you should never play the game of what if, right? It's like a really dangerous path sometimes. But I do wonder what my life would have looked like if I had stayed in New York and not moved to LA. Because what I'm able to say now, which I couldn't say back then for so many reasons, because I wanted to be a television star, I wanted to be in movies, I wanted to do that path. But where I think I got the most energy and life and fulfillment from was being on stage. And I was
mm,
really good at that. And all of my education, high school, undergrad, going to Yale, studying for a time at Circle in the Square, prepared me to do that. So I was 100% proficient and I could walk into any theater and know how to do that thing. And television was always a miss for me. And I think it's a miss for everyone in the beginning. So but I felt out of place too, because at that time, if you remember the early 2000s, they were not looking for light skinned Black dudes in Hollywood. They just weren't.
mhm,
It was a different flavor. Right now, we want multi-culti and where are you from? And back then, they were like,
mhm,
no, you
mhm.
Black. And so I could not get my footing to a place where I felt comfortable. And so when the career that came that I'm in now presented itself, I stepped into it because I just felt like I needed some control in my life, maybe. But I wish, and I would say this to my younger version of myself too, don't give up your dreams. Even when they get hard, even when they don't look like it's going to work out, right? And so I'm like, and that's why I say don't play what if, because then it just takes you down all these tunnels and all that kind of stuff. But that's why that decision came. I think I couldn't find myself in it. And I didn't have a voice and I wasn't expressing this to people. I wasn't like out talking about it, but I couldn't find my way through. And I didn't have the resources around me to say, okay, stay with it, keep going, don't give up.
Mhm.
I didn't have that voice in my head, my own or someone else's.
What part of your actor, the artist in you, the storyteller in you shows up in your work now?
Let me tell you, I was just in Mexico. We're opening a property down there. And part of my job, I have a very broad job in my current role, um, is to help properties build, ideate, and execute, and then deliver in a financially viable way immersive experiences. And so that's the fun part of my job. And then there's a part of my job that's like finances, all that kind of stuff, right? The business part of it. So I was just in Mexico down in Quintana Roo, which I love that because that's the name Joan Didion gave her daughter. So I was down in Quintana Roo. So I always feel very connected there because I love Joan Didion. And this property is building 4 beautiful, what we call moments. And the first moment I'll talk about, we found a woman who's a psychologist, but she's also steeped in the tradition of the Mayan culture.
Mm.
And we did intention setting, of course. You always do intention setting. But then the next step of that was we actually hiked about a mile or so into the rainforest to a cenote, which is this sacred space of water, which was probably 60 feet below the surface, if not deeper, of the land. And so we went down and we did a ritual, the Mayan culture's rituals around blessing.
Escucho el abuelo sol. The sun came out. Gracias.
and asking the guides in these regions to support us and to give us wisdom, these ancient practices. And then we swam in the cenote. I've never seen water that color. It was purple.
Mm.
You could see to the bottom. And it was cold, but it was more soothing. It was cool. So I'm working on building that experience with him. So I go back and I talk about what we can do to make that better, how we can market that, how we can position that, what's the story we want to tell. I'll tell you, we built one experience in Bali where we take guests from the property to the communal kitchen to cook with the women, because it's the women who are at that kitchen cooking. And
Wow.
we cook with those women,
Wow.
and then we take that food to the orphanages and feed the orphans. So when I say I'm building immersive experiences, I'm truly putting people into the destinations of these locations. That requires everything from me, because I have to be in the mind of a creator, I have to be in the mind of a director, and I have to empathize and understand what the guest's perspective is on that. And then I got to turn around and talk about it from a business sense and say, this is the financial justification and all those things. So all of my skill sets are used, just not in a way that I thought they were going to be used.
Yep. What I love, what I'm hearing though, is the intentionality
Oh.
behind what you're designing, the thoughtfulness. You know, when people think about going to those spaces for a vacation, a retreat, or whatever, what they're seeking is peace. And it sounds like you are from the inside out thinking of how to build experiences of peace.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, very beautiful to hear and
Yeah.
to think about. It does not escape me that you have held the position that you've had for a while and that you walked through the pandemic.
Yeah.
So again, we were just talking about experiences of peace. Every experience you just described was about people, community. So what was it like to walk through the pandemic with the job that you had? How did you maintain your sanity? How did you, because it's so antithetical to togetherness. Everything about the pandemic was, it was terrifying. I don't know if you thought maybe I'll never have a job again. Like none of us knew if we were ever going to leave our house. So how did you psychologically walk through that and hold everything together?
So during the pandemic, I was the chairman of the board of the International Spa Association. I held that position for 4 years, which is unbelievable. And so the remit, we advocate for the spa industry and for particularly making sure that the mission, the vision of spa is aligned to this idea of being whole, of being well, of being together. And we became, through that COVID process, the voice of reason, the voice of calm, the voice of action for the spa industry. And I say this without being hyperbolic. That organization and the team that was in place really shepherded the spa industry through that and got us to the other side. I would say sitting in that for 4 years, because I was chairman for 4 years, like right as it started. And then, most of the world was still closed in 2024. Asia just reopened in 2024. Like it wasn't like it is in Texas, where it's like COVID what? That wasn't happening everywhere in the world. I felt a huge responsibility for that. I felt, and I've had people tell me this, that I was their face to get them through COVID. And when we were first able to come back together, the amount of hugs and just like gratitude that people expressed for what I, through the organization, was able to do and be for them was very humbling. And it made me understand how to receive from people. But it was hard because I had to put my needs secondary to the greater good of the industry. But it was one of the most important times for me because I think it taught me about leadership in a whole other way. And I really attribute it to a woman named Lynn McNeese. So I was the chairman of the board. She is the president of the organization. And if people know boards and businesses, there's a president of the business, there's a chairman of the board, and the board represents the constituents. The president runs the bureaucracy of the organization. She's an amazing woman. She's been in that position for over 30 years. She comes from she's going to kill me for saying this. So she's going to be like, why are you saying this? But she comes from a political family. When you think about Nixon going to China, that was her father putting that together. And I believe she worked in the education side of the first Bush administration. And so she taught me leadership at a presidential level, I would say, and how you show up. And the good ones are in service too, right?
Mhm.
And so it was minor things like in board meetings, speak last. Because the minute you say something as the chairman, you put your thumb on the scale. And what you want from your board is their participation. And me being who I am, I want to talk first and longest, right? So it was things like talk last. It was things like, and when, and because so much of what we were doing during COVID was virtual, I was always on Zoom. And when I say iSpot set me up to be successful and that organization, I'm not kidding. I mean, and you know this from TV. Because I was in the role for so long, they were able to write for how I talk. They were able to literally replicate my speaking on the page. So all I would have to do sometimes is look in the monitor and talk. And it was like me talking, which was amazing. But she would sometimes say to me, you look too serious. You're going to make people nervous. Smile.
Interesting.
Down to that level of stage management. So again, I'm used to performance, but it was an amazing experience. And you really saw the idea of people coming together to save something. And for me, it helped me grow as a leader. It changed me. But a lot of that was Lynn. I have to say a lot of that was Lynn. She taught me how to be that kind of leader, which I was not before. So that was amazing.
And talk about being a leader. So I happen to know that there are young people of color, younger than you, who look up to you and who feel like they can do their best work because you're in the role that you're in. Because, am I understanding there are very few people of color at high levels in the industry that you're in?
Correct. And in most countries, not everywhere, but in most countries, yes, that is very true.
And is that overwhelming to you? Is it humbling? How do you carry that responsibility and how do you receive when you get feedback from younger people saying, thank God you're where you are, because it is an invitation for me to be at my best and highest?
It's definitely humbling, Attica. But I've learned to receive it because if someone has the courage to say that to you and you can't receive it with grace and humility, then you've just like crapped all over their sentiment and their feeling. I didn't say that very eloquently, but that's what you're doing. If you can't like receive it from them and hold it, and it's the hardest thing is to take compliments. I've learned to say thank you, and I appreciate that, which is very validating for them. And I think, a theme of this show, a theme of both of our lives is representation matters. And that we sit in places where there's not a ton of people who look like us in some of these spaces. And so when you have the privilege of being there, it matters beyond just the context that you're sitting in. And people are watching all the time. It's it's humbling, and I've learned to accept it and receive it. And I hope we get to a point where it's not remarkable.
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're a podcast host or someone wanting to be interviewed on podcasts as a guest, visit podmatch.com. Podmatch automatically connects ideal podcast guests and hosts together for interviews. We always say it works just like a dating app, but instead of connecting you for dates, it connects you for podcast interviews. Podmatch has connected over 85,000 guests and hosts together for interviews that listeners love, all while saving you countless hours of administrative work through built-in automations. If you're ready to level up your podcast interviews on either side of the mic, start today by visiting podmatch.com.
Yes. Yes. Why do you think people have such a hard time taking compliments? I mean, I do too. And I know other people that do too. Why are we like that?
I think we have this side of us that's like, we're not supposed to brag. We're not supposed to be arrogant. We're not supposed to, trumpet our own successes. And I think it's a fear of intimacy with another person, to let them see who you are and to comment on that when you just get to the core of it.
That kind of gives me chills because that feels so true. And I never thought about it that way ever before. But that is exactly what it feels like. It feels, in a weird way, you think that vulnerability means you're sharing something bad. But there's also vulnerability in being seen in your goodness.
Yeah.
It's weird, but that what you just said is really, I'm going to take that with me because I never thought of it that way, but it feels really true.
We all probably walk around with a healthy dose of imposter syndrome. And so it's the I'm not worthy. Like I really didn't, produce all those fantastic TV shows that were commercial and critical successes. I didn't really do that, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
write I didn't write 5 New York Times best-selling novels.
Only one. See, now my imposter showed up. Only one of them was a New York Times bestseller for 1 week. Now, see,
But you check the box.
I checked. I'm gonna take it.
It's tough. It's the work of being human.
Yeah. Let's go back to the theme of home. You were so kind to talk about Guide Me Home. And it's interesting that you talked about that title because I struggled with the title because it's a trilogy. And the second book in the trilogy is Heaven, My Home. And then it was Guide Me Home. I was like, I can't do home back to back. That sounds crazy. And yet that was so the title. I couldn't undo it. It was just the title. There's nothing I could do about it. That book series was me coming home. You talked about the different understandings of home. I remember when I got the idea to write the book series, I was on Empire and I said to myself, I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I meant I want to go home to Texas. I'm writing about this hip hop family in New York. I want to emotionally be back in Texas. And I meant home for me, which is also books that I wanted to go home. So to talk to me about one, why the theme for this season being home and the different meanings of it to you.
Well, Attica, I didn't know there was going to be a season 4. I was like, okay, 3, I did it. I was so just like heavy with what was happening in the world. And then I had to kind of check out a little bit. And then I moved home. And I don't know what, like literally, Attica, I literally was in LA one day in my $4,000 a month place where I was staying and going,
That sounds like LA.
what? I literally packed my stuff, got in my car, and drove down the 10 to Texas. I forgot the question. I got caught in my journey in my head.
It was just about why the theme of coming home for this season and what home means to you.
So I came home. Literally, I came home and I was like, this is the season. This is the story that I need to tell. And so many people coming out of 2020 and 21, 22 went back home. And so I think that's real for people. And for me, home is not, it is a physical place. Like we grew up in A-Leaf. I'm not in A-Leaf now. I'm in Third Ward. So I'm very far from A-Leaf and that whole existence. But home obviously is Houston. But I'm also talking about a return to the core of who you are. When you kind of strip away everything that you sort of I put on over the past 30, 35 years, what are you getting to that's beneath all of that? And I think, it's so interesting. Do you remember when Facebook first started?
Uh-huh.
People were like getting married again and breaking up with their current spouse, their high school sweetheart. Like that was like a thing. It was like a thing that was happening. And people were reconnecting with all these people they hadn't talked to in years. Because there's something about that part of your life when you were a child. And not everyone has the privilege of a great upbringing. I understand that. But there's something that's about authentically you that hasn't been completely pulled apart and destroyed by failed relationships, dashed dreams, all the things that happen, and the great things, right? That you move through as you leave home. So the people that I'm talking to on this season, it's a very interesting group. It's people who are stepping out of their comfort zones into their true humanity, their true identity. And to me, that's what coming home is, and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, I'm going to make a weird analogy, or maybe it's not weird, but so there is a theory of philosophy of child rearing that's called RIE, R-I-E, Resources for Infant Educators. And it was started by this woman in Budapest. But the idea of it at its core is there's a lot of stuff about how you let babies play, how you let them move. You don't manipulate their bodies. You let them figure out how to roll over on their own. Anyway. But one of the core things of it in their play is you as a parent stay still, let them go off and play, and they're going to come back to you and get filled up, and they're going to go back out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost like a form of home.
Yeah.
And I feel like this conversation, when I was in New York about a month ago, I saw another friend from high school that I've known forever. That was a form of home. My husband is a form of home. So there's like, we return to these places to fill up, and then we can go back out into the world and be our best selves. But we need that way of going and filling up, and being with people that have known you from the beginning of time is a form of home. So I know you to have been raised in a matriarchal world.
Yep.
But I also know that you have talked about cultivating relationships with Black male elders, men of counsel, men to seek guidance from. How have you done that, and how has it helped shape your life?
Ooh. Not all Black, too, by the way. I would say that I have such respect for our mothers and however you play that role in people's lives, right? And not all mothers are birth mothers, right? But a male child needs a male influence in their life. It teaches you how to do the things that men do. This is controversial, what I'm saying, I'm sure. Somebody's going to be like, well, and that doesn't mean that women can't.
Mm-hmm. I don't hear you saying that women can't.
Right.
What I hear you say is that there is no denying that there is something special about a young, growing man seeing malehood, an example of it that is it's at its highest and best.
Yes. Yes. And so I didn't have that really growing up. I mean, it was tough not to have that. I think I was sort of lost a little bit. But as I got older, and I didn't do this intentionally, I guess somewhere inside of myself, I did it intentionally. I started having very close, strong relationships with men who were like brothers to me or fathers to me. And I think about my brother-in-law. I look at someone like him who's an accomplished doctor. I want to say he was a lieutenant colonel or colonel in the army, who literally went off to war to protect the homeland, who literally provided for his wife and their in total 3 kids, and now their multitude of grandkids that are coming. And I look at him and I go, that is the kind of man that I want to be, right? And what lessons can I learn from talking to him and understanding him and seeing his own struggles, right? Like it's not without struggle. I have friends like my friend Richard, who's the husband of one of my dearest friends from college. So he's been in my life since 1992, who, when I had an emergency appendectomy in New York, the first person that I woke up to was him sitting in my hospital room. And he and I have had combative relations at times. We're on the opposite side politically, but I want the person who's going to be in the hospital with me when I need, and my family could not be there at that point. So when I woke up, coming out of this crazy, we were like, we got to take your appendix out now. And I woke up and I was like, Rich, I think about my friend, Nick Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
You know Nick Pepper.
Yeah.
Who, and I have a brother whom I love dearly. And Nicholas is like my soulmate. And he's always like, when are you coming home? Meaning back to California. And he's like, when are you coming home? We need you here, or he'll call and say, what's happening? Tell me everything that's happening. So I have these really very strong, very different kinds of men in my life. I'll go, this is what, to me, positive manhood looks like. It has nothing to do with how much money you have, your job. It has to do with what kind of human being do you choose to be on the planet.
We're in a time where everyone's poking at manhood, and rightfully so in a lot of ways, because there has been an evidence of toxic masculinity.
Oh, 100%.
So I think it really matters to highlight and talk about the parts of masculinity that should be celebrated. There is a toughness and a protectiveness that can also be tender and thoughtful and warm and kind. There is room for that kind of strength. I love talking about that kind of stuff. I think it's really important. I just have this weird thing while I'm talking to you. I don't even know what you would teach, but it just came to me. Would you ever teach?
I
It
would.
was just really, it was just really coming through me that I could see you being a very valuable voice for educating.
I would love to teach one day. I feel like that may be the next iteration as I sort of
Mhm.
move into the next stages of my life, you know.
So in 4 seasons, how many people have you interviewed?
100
From all kind of walks of life, all over the
everywhere,
world.
everywhere.
What are 3 big things you've taken from doing this podcast?
You don't need a roadmap. You don't need a roadmap. I didn't have a roadmap when I started, and I didn't know where it was going, and I still don't know where it's going. So I'm trying to manifest some stuff this year that I haven't manifested before, and pray about it. But you don't need a roadmap. Um, you can only be as good as your information lets you be. When I did the first season, it was so rough. I looked at it now and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was really bad. But a friend of mine, her name is Jill. We went to Vanderbilt together, and she's like, it's good. I was like, she's like, it's good. And she said, which was so, and my friends are honest, which I just appreciate. She said, you will get better, and
Mhm.
it is good for what you know now. So that's why I say that.
Damn, that's powerful.
Powerful. And then I think the third thing that I've learned is you have to own your content and what you put into the world. And I know that people have teams that do things for them, and people have managers and publicists and agents, and everyone has everything, right? Like, but at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you are responsible for what you put out into the world with your name on it. And you have to own that. And I write, edit, do my own graphics, find the music, because it is a reflection of me. And I think this is really important in the time of AI and sort of like, what does it mean? And Chat GPT, and how do we wrestle with all of this? And all of that aside, you still have to own what you create and put into the world. And it requires a lot from you it requires a lot to do that.
Yeah, very much so. Let me ask you this. Do you have any advice about when you talked about you don't have to have a roadmap,
Yeah.
which I also agree with? I am in a period right now where I'm trying to do something that I don't have a roadmap for. Do you have any advice about how to tolerate the discomfort of not having a roadmap? It's just very scary to just be out here where you are trying to do something and you don't, it's just, I find that half the work of doing anything is being able to tolerate. It doesn't feel good to not know what's going to happen, even though none of us knows what's going to happen. But anyway, if you have any advice about what it is to start down a path without a map.
Well, I'm going to quote Attica Locke back to herself, who said to me years ago in LA, the victory is just in showing up.
Ah, shit, I did say that.
Yes.
Let me listen to myself.
Listen to yourself. Show up. Show up. I also, it's interesting. I've had the privilege of sitting in boardrooms, being chairman of a board, of sitting in boardrooms with CEOs, owners of companies. Ain't nobody got a roadmap. McKinsey wouldn't have a job if people had roadmaps. Bain wouldn't have a job if people had roadmaps. So nobody has
Point.
nobody has a roadmap. And so you just got to show up and do it. You can make good bets. You can make smart bets, but you got to show up. And you
It
got
is a trip to be alive. Being alive is bananas. It is the most wonderful thing in the world. And yet, if you're not going to just kind of make yourself small and hide out, but if you are going to show up, it's kind of crazy to just be out here. I don't know what's going to happen. Is the ocean's going to be here? I don't know, but I'm just here.
I'm here.
That is a lot. That
Yeah.
is a lot.
Did I answer your question?
You did. You
Okay.
100% did, which is you just show up and figure it out. So it was very helpful for me to hear, to be reminded that everybody doesn't have it figured out. And the comparison that I have is when I I had to learn that when you pick up a book and you compare yourself, like, why isn't my book? Well, that's the finished deal. You end up thinking that what you're looking at is the whole journey, but that you're just looking at the finished product. You're missing all the steps that led up to it. Do you know the saying of comparison is the thief of joy?
Oh my gosh. Amen.
Right. So I have moments where I'm at my best self, and I have other moments like, I want what they got. Like, I have those moments too. How do you manage all that?
Um, I don't always manage it well, Attica. I'm not going to lie to you. The time that I remember the most where I managed it badly, and then I'll tell you my answer to your question. I don't know if you know my friend Toby Poser.
I don't think
She,
so.
she is an actress. She is now an acclaimed movie maker of horror films. She and her husband make incredible. They're owning that genre. But back in the day, she was an actress. And we were both in New York together in the hustle doing it. And then she landed a soap opera. She got a contract role on Guiding Light, 3 years playing one of the meanest women in daytime television. And I felt jealous of her because I wanted that. And in New York at the time, those soap jobs were the plum jobs to get. And the comparative brain is a dangerous place for us to be.
I have to work on this too. I have to keep challenging my scarcity thinking that there are only so many slots. There are only so many blessings. There's only so much goodness, as opposed to believing in yes and. Like believing in that there can be multiple kind of, they didn't have to be a cap on it. Like, what if there were a world where there was no cap on goodness? I'm going to ask you something now that if you say, Attica, I'm not going to talk about this, that's fine. We'll go over it.
Okay.
But I understand you to have had 2 near-death experiences.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the plane, and I'm also thinking of that car accident you had on your way to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
How does that factor into the spiritual journey? Does it at all? And what out of these 2 experiences are you carrying with you going forward?
I had just graduated from Yale. September 11th had happened, and a lot of us decided to leave New York for obvious reasons and move to LA. So I was driving to LA. I was on the I-10 outside of Deming, New Mexico, not too far outside of Juarez, Mexico, and El Paso. And I was on my way to LA, staying with Tim Biansato, and I flipped my car in the desert. I was passing a truck that would eventually tow my car. I fishtailed. The car spun around the other direction on the freeway, went off, hit those bushes on the side of the road, and the car just flipped 4 or 5 times over. I was lucky that the car landed upright. Glass shattered everywhere. I'm cut, covered in blood, tore the tendon in my hand. But I was able to get up and walk away from that car accident. And I always tell the story, these 2 women in a white truck came and helped me and put all my stuff in the car and put a blanket around me. The police have said there was no women in the truck. I'm like, but who put all the stuff in my car? Because I couldn't do that. I literally could not do that. I did somehow find my phone and call Tempe and say, I'm not going to be in LA. I'm going to get there tomorrow. I was in so much.
Oh, you were in the hospital for weeks.
I was in the hospital. The plane incident, which I was in a plane situation. I was flying back from a iSpot conference, and the engine was not good on that plane. The NTSB has since said the plane should not have even been in the air, probably. But we had to make an emergency landing in Denver. And when we landed and pulled to the gate, the entire right side of the plane burst into flames. And we were on a closed vessel with no doors open because they pulled the plane to the gate. They had to wait for the jet bridge to get there. And so we were lucky the plane didn't explode in the air, honestly. I remember the sound of the windows melting and people screaming. I remember the smell, even though I had covered my nose, and just the smoke. I remember there was a lady on the plane who had her child with her. And I didn't notice them because they were sitting a few rows ahead of me. As a kid, I'm like, he's going to cry the whole flight, but she didn't. But she was frozen. And as I was coming down, I was trying to get off the plane. Oh, I will say, the minute I realized what was happening, I started walking. I did not freeze. I was like, I'm getting out of here. But then, of course, people came into the aisle so I grabbed her because she was frozen. And I said to her, you got to come off the plane. So we were pushing down that aisle together, and we got to the emergency exit, but we couldn't go out there because one side was on fire and the other was just smoke. And they couldn't, there were people standing on the wings. We finally saw through the smoke. The flight attendant was like trying to wave us down towards the main door because the jet bridge had finally come. And we got on that jet bridge, and that poor woman went into a full-on panic attack. And I said to her, you have to breathe and you have to move because we can't be in here if this plane blows up. And so I just pushed her up and myself up the jet bridge. Life is like super fragile, and at any moment it's done, So I don't know how to answer that question, Attica. I don't know how to answer that question in a meaningful way. But when life does that to you twice,
you're supposed to be here. I'm going to tell you
I'm
that.
supposed to be here, and
You're
I'm like,
supposed to be here.
and I think a lot of my spiritual journey is tied to that, only because I'm trying to discern what that reason is, separate and apart from what the voices all around you tell you shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm.
None of that, all that has to recede, and you're left standing before God or whatever you believe to be accountable for that. And it's up to you to figure out with God what that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I hear in your story is that you did for that mother what those two women did for you. And some of what we're meant to do on this earth are these big fancy things and being chairman of boards. And some of what we're meant to do is to hold somebody's hand to get off of jet bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. I never thought about it like that. See, that's why I wanted to do this with you.
Oh, Patrick, I love you so much.
Attica, thank you. Thank you.
I can't wait to see you in a little bit.
Yes, when you're here, we will see each other. Thank you, Attica. Thank you for you and the voice and the space that you hold on this planet. We need it.
Right back at you. Right back at you.
To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. We all will leave a legacy. And the journey home is how we learn to embody both. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.